where do things stand right now with Major League Baseball, best you can tell, for this season?
There's a soft deadline coming up. In order to have an 82-game season that starts around 4th of July weekend, they need to get players in camp by about June 13th. So, I figure about June 9th or 10th. That's when they have to come to an agreement to make that possible. It's not a really hard deadline, Rich. You could always have, say, a 60-game season instead of an 82-game one, but this is what we have in front of us right now. And right now, both sides are really dug in. And if you just go by the temperature of negotiations right now, you would say that an agreement is not likely. But if you step back from it and you think about what is the cost of no agreement and no baseball in 2020, I think that makes you optimistic, or at least me, that these two sides will come to the realization that they need one another. If it's a battle of wills, there'll be no baseball because he is dug in. But if it's a battle of intellect and compromise and negotiation and an understanding of how important not just this year is, but the next couple of years, then yes, there will be one.
What, best you can tell, was the owner's offer, if you will? And because, the concept is, again, if I'm not wrong, before you get to it, that the owners think the players think what was negotiated in March is what is applicable now, and owners say that there's now been a change in reality from March, and we got to talk about something else here, and players think that what is being offered is a second pay cut that also could mimic a salary cap. Is that an accurate assessment of what's going on? Am I missing?
Yeah, that's a good job. I mean, that agreement in March that was put in place, the players are essentially saying no backsies. That's
nice.
it. We negotiated an agreement, and we're going to get paid based on how many games are played on a prorated basis of our annual 2020 salaries. The owners are saying, wait a second, we actually have a provision in that agreement that says we will continue to discuss the economics if we have to play in empty ballparks. And obviously now it looks like that could be probably an entire season with no fans. So the economic realities, according to the owners, have changed since March, and the players are saying, no, it hasn't. We have our agreement. That's that. So that's kind of a sticking point here. The players, and you saw the quote from Max Scherzer Wednesday night saying, we're not taking a second pay cut. But obviously the owners are saying things are a lot different. Now, you mentioned a salary cap. That was not a formal proposal to the players. That was floated, the idea that, hey, revenues are so far down, we'll gladly share with the players 50% of our revenues. Well, listen, 21 of the 30 teams weren't around in 1994 when we lost the World Series because the owners tried to get a salary cap. They should still know there's no way that flies. That's a complete non-starter with the union. That was a waste of time. It probably ticked off some people unnecessarily. So now their idea is we will use a sliding pay scale in terms of the cuts that we're going to ask players to take. Now, I know the players look at that as, hey, you're trying to drive a wedge between the high revenue, high income guys who are going to take the largest percentage cut against the so-called, most players, 2/3 of players make $1 million or less, the rank and file. So I don't think that was the purpose here. It was to divide the players. I think what MLB is doing is what they're doing on a club basis, what many businesses are doing, and they're asking the highest salaried employees to take a larger percentage of a cut during a pandemic. It wasn't like they came up with this idea themselves. It's happening across Wall Street. It's happening across Main Street. But the players did not take kindly to that. So the players now, the ball's in their court. They got this proposal about a sliding pay scale. They've made their feelings known that they hate it. They don't like it. So they have to come back with something. And their idea is to come back with saying, hey, how about we play more games? And the owner's position on this, I believe, is, wait a second. These games still won't have fans in the stands. So 100 games times 0 ballpark revenue is exactly the same sum as 82 games times 0. And the other thing that's really key here, Rich, is that the players want to play more games and push the World Series to, say, November. I think that's a non-starter for the owners because everybody, not just baseball, but in general, people are worried about a second wave of the virus, right? Once we hit the flu season, they want to get the World Series done by the end of October. So pushing it to November is really risky in the owner's opinion because, believe it or not, they get almost 60% of their national TV revenue just in the postseason. This year, that's essentially $1 billion pot that's out there if the postseason is played to completion. So they don't want to risk that. So I think the idea of playing more games, extending the season, is not that's not going to solve this, I don't think.
Well, and then there's, when they come up with a proposal that says the higher paid guys will take the cuts and the lower paid guys won't, how do they not think that won't be viewed by the union as something that puts the pressure on the highest paid guys to do something to make sure the lower paid guys don't look at them adversely? How could that possibly be forwarded without the knowledge of how it would be taken and received? I get it. I totally get it. The response was almost predictable, but again, this is what teams are doing on a club basis. The same week the Nationals did that, the Dodgers did that, asking employees to take pay cuts based on a sliding pay scale. So then my question for you is,
what's happening here is the players now have found a unified voice. Listen, we know that they didn't really do well in the last CBA, right? At least economically. They did well with some quality of life issues in terms of off days and the scheduling, things like that. Economically, they didn't do well. I thought during the whole Houston Astros sign stealing scandal, and that seems like ages ago, doesn't it? that kind of splintered the union, right? There were some players who were calling out other players. That doesn't happen too often. But now I think they have found a common voice, and it's essentially on being asked to take what they see as a second pay cut.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.